Okay, let's have a look-see. Look, so based, bro. Look at this. The guy's getting his flowers too. Awesome. All right, Rat Lord. I don't know who this guy is, by the way. Snare Bears. His name's the Space Rat. See how easy it is to get engaging and meaningful PvP, CIG? With patch 4.9, we saw some new commodities added to terminals in Pyro. These specifically are much higher of a return on investment than what we've had prior. I know Partilium used to be like this back during the Partilium Wars. What's been going on at Ashland and Chawler's Beach, which you guys have seen from stream, since the start of 4.9 is the perfect example of how CIG should be using profit and greed as a carrot on a stick. Since then, we've seen a massive uptick in the amount of PvP that's purely focused on a singular objective in Pyro. We've seen traders using escorts, ground pirates, pirates getting pirated, PMC groups protecting random players, and skirmishes that involve 10 to 20 players, both on foot and in the air. This is exactly the outlet that pirates and PvPers need, which creates a secondary benefit to all players. PvP having a purpose. I'm all for shooting at someone just because you can, but the honest truth is that the game is unfinished and the mechanics that we should have in place to punish and persuade against criminal behavior aren't in yet. The magic bullet here was cranking the ROI up. Pyro is risky, and while there are definitely traders that do trade commodities, the bulk of players opt out to do contract hauling. That's fine, and while it does need some tweaking in the form of requiring collateral, if the ROI isn't really worth the risk, why would they not just run contracted? Here's a take. I really think that the contracted cargo missions should be like beginner level stuff. Like it should be tutorial zone behavior, or just really low ROI, extremely low, like the kind of stuff that you are doing at the beginning stages of your hauling journey, because nothing gets your like heart pounding and stuff like when you actually have investment in the game. I think that I think cargo hauling, the most fun I've ever had was cargo hauling at Jumptown when we put like all of our fucking money into it. And it would go sideways like half the time, but the return was like so well. So like when it hit, and when it was miserable, it was miserable. I really thought that was like the most fun they could have. And what this guy's ultimately pointing at, right, is like what Jumptown was, the old Jumptown. I think it's important to like talk about like why the new Jumptown didn't work or didn't hit as much, because it was just Pez dispensing loot. When you would lose, you didn't lose anything. There was no consequences to it. Like there was no loss. There was no gamble aspect to it. It was just you died, you came back. You know, if you make the game like Battlefield, it just gets out Battlefield by Battlefield. You know, so it's like, but when you tie it into risk, the economy, losing and winning in the game and actually having a consequence, that's what was good about the old Jumptown, is because that every time you went there, it was a different story. It wasn't the same thing every time. Which is why like this new location's really good. There's some points you got to cover though. Like Ashland, it has terrible shader problems. Like the ground is flashing. Pyro is really starved when it comes to server resources. Pyro is less of a PvP system because it has no bounty system. You can't find players. Pirates fighting pirates is extremely hard. It's like this huge system that doesn't have enough profit for risk, and there's no risk. Like a pirate dies in his Talon. The ship comes back fine. His FPS gear is fine. And he lost out on nothing. So it's like, I think that they need to reintroduce risk for combat players as well. And this is a problem with the tier 0 stuff and the tier 1 insurance on ships and FPS kits. I think that's been like really bad for the game. But the big one is it's just too hard to find people in Pyro. That's why you don't go there. Like if I go to Stanton, you can do bounty hunting where you specifically go after players who have put their hand up for PvP, and you can do the same with crime stat and get your own bounty hunters coming after you. It's because of the crime system that Stanton is good for PvP, you know, and I think Pyro needs to have some sort of equivalent tied into the mission system to allow for finding other players that are down, that are there to fight. Yeah, man. Like, I think this is good. This is a good way to relieve pressure off of players trying to avoid PvP in Stanton, although they need to take responsibility at some point. You know, like, you can't just keep being a non-willing to PvP player and then landing at locations like Grimhex is your home location, or going to Daymar Hathor, you know, expecting to just completely be left alone. It's a sandbox after all. Anyway, I want to just go through his thread. So he put, I worked on this. I do most of the sandbox commodity prices and trade routes, etc. So economy team, I guess. First off, I'm glad you like the new route. I've been working on getting momentum to try something like this for a while, which is why we have to give the guy his flowers. Yeah, like, for sure. Ever since the Asoyan hide route went pretty well, I've been stalking Ashland in-game for a few days now. May or may not have killed me, stolen my Alespo, had your stuff stolen by me, or hit me with a railgun. I'm usually in a Titan or a Zeus. Yo, bro. The bottom of the tier list. Like, what is this? I am proud to say I've lost much more UEC than I've gained since the last patch I've dropped, and I regret nothing. I always prefer communicating more with y'all about the reasoning and goals behind what we do, so let's do that. CIG, I implore you to continue to add commodities around the various POIs of Pyro that have ROIs high enough to draw players there. This, unfortunately, isn't a infinite good content route like this. Hit diminishing returns pretty fast. I want these locations to be a hotbed of danger and death. That's an intentional design goal. So he's trying to, like, make dynamic jump town rotating around. If anyone remembers, they put up, it was a couple years ago, it was like a journal update that would ping the whole server with commodity price updates. That was like a really good one. And he should use that system where you just buff a commodity and then that inherently creates PvP at a couple locations where that commodity comes from. But this works for me too. Like, this works for me too, but it doesn't have to be on a patch per patch basis. But super base that he's doing this. The one thing I would just be like is, when you pick the next location, Highlander, which is so good that he's doing this, by the way, massively appreciate this. We've been asking for this for years. It's like, just keep in mind server resources, how well the location performs. Like, is it strict atmosphere? Is there an armistice zone there? What's the terrain like? What's the FPS like? Is it optimized? Because, you know, like you guys just saw before we had the stream, or sorry, before I open up this spectrum, it's like, I was just fighting at Ashland. There would have been 50 players there. It was 0.1 server FPS with a 10,000 ms delay. So, you know, and that's highlights issues with Pyro itself, is that it never got optimized and stuff. But I don't think these locations purely need to be at Pyro. I think they can be at Stanton too. Because the thing is, right, is like, if PvP like what happened today happened in Stanton, all those players now have bounties, which means that one fight is going to trickle into 10 different fights over the next week, because they now have lingering crime stat and bounties associated to them. So, you know, make these locations on the other side of Stanton, you know, out to the side on one of the moons by ArcCorp or something, where you think the player count is lower, because those locations are really optimized, and stuff like that. Anyways, we'll keep going. That's an intentional design goal. I want somewhere that players who log into the game and feel like they are hungry to shoot someone can go reliably and find others who knowingly are willing to risk that. So based. Not only because that gives them the gameplay that they desire, but because it keeps more of them out of the low profit trade routes or lanes. So based. Player bases aren't exactly a zero sum, but they aren't that far away from it either. The more predators at the watering hole, the more they prey that aren't at the watering hole can feel safer. if we add too many of these high ROI options, that concentration wanes. So true. If everything's perfectly balanced, everyone's spread out and everyone's running into the PvPers. So it's so based. What you're talking about as a ROI location, Highlander, used to be Hathor. But the reward for Hathor, people don't need after early into the patch. So it's like Hathor could have got buffs to have a commodity or like a resource that needed to keep coming back to, and that would have moved all the PvP there too. So, but he's right, man. Like, it's just some of the locations in the game are already that on a smaller scale, and they perform better with lag. Like, I would argue it would be worth doing this at Daymar Hathor because the performance there is really good. It's very optimized. So that when you get all this, you know, players that are willing to do combat like this, you've given them a playground where the tick rate's good and the FPS is good. Because the problem with this, and I don't want to shit on it too bad, but it's just like Ashland performs horrible under stress. Like, the lag is crazy. But it's such a dub, like, really good stuff. Part of the risk makes it work in the sandbox balance to allow such high ROI fall-offs. So good, man. So awesome. We could definitely add some more in the future, but the main element that we'd need to add first is a better way in game for traders and pirates to both discover the current prices and how much they have shifted via supply. Not necessarily, dude. Like, it's good when there's mystery. You don't want to, like, point them where to go every time. You do this, like, under stealth, then some content creator makes a video about it and everyone dogpiles, and then it spreads like a rumor throughout the community. It's cool. I liked the fact that this was done from stealth. I think that's so cool. It's like, I've heard, like, whispers of this, and then, you know, a week later, it's just crazy. A week later, it's World War III at Ashland. But I've been, like, people have been talking about this for like a week now. And I've been here, like, messages in this Discord, guys in voice saying, hey, I heard this is pretty cool. And now it's just turned into total Armageddon. So yeah, I think keeping it low key is really cool. In a specific, I'd like to add an interstellar route that only sells 24 SCU exclusively so we can push for more large ship sandbox gameplay to happen around there. Dude, what a blessing it is. What a absolute blessing it is to have a sandbox enjoyer / respecter in the game, man. So based. I know we did some other posts, but, you know, I don't think I need to go through all of them. Here we go. I agree. In some ways, I do think overall operating cost for combat needs to go up. I agree. My dream scenario would be that players who are more focused on just shooting down ships more than actual piracy burn through money to do so, and then end up feeling pressured to actually make some profit. Yeah, and this is the problem. It's like, this is the beauty of him tying this combat to a trade route. Because you bring cargo haulers and traders, like, to go hand in hand with combat. Ultimately, what we were hoping was going to come from crafting was a necessity for logistics and trade-based players to provide for combat players. And Tier 0 insurance has ruined that. Because you get your gear or you outfit your ship in the first 2 hours of the patch and then you're done. And you're going to keep reusing that same ship and that same kit infinitely. Like, it doesn't work. And the point is when combat players actually have risk or decay, which is how they should do it. You craft components, you craft ships, you craft weapons, armor, FPS stuff. You get certain amounts of uses out of it before it's completely unusable. It's like, then you create a flow where combat players are also dependent on the market or traders and logistics. And then that relationship isn't just completely hostile all the time. You know, like, the the PvP orgs should need to have good relationships with logistics players and organizations and the player market in order to survive. It's a two-way street too. It's like maybe logistics orgs are using your PvP org to corner the market and take out competitors and stuff like that. There's no relationship between the two of them. And I think there needs to be, or at least it needs to be more common rather than you buy what you need in the first week and then you're done. So I think this is a progression problem and an economy problem, but super awesome, man. Cool that a dev gets it. My only criticism would be pick the locations be very careful with that. Look at the wider picture. Like, does this provide good FPS gameplay? Do ground vehicles work here? Does flight work here? Is the location susceptible to bombs? Which it is, but you're not going to be able to avoid that. But there might be locations where it's less of a problem. 5, what's the tick rate like at that server? What's the server allocation for resources when it comes to that location? And how bad's the FPS? And also, I just say is be open to putting this in Stanton, man, because Stanton has great optimization. There's a lot of security-based players that can go there. You would create trickle PvP through willing players through crime stat. And then they'd be getting hunted by bounty hunters. You'd be promoting the comma ray, going back and forth between players wanting the comma ray off. You'd find that if it was in Stanton and you were taking advantage of the crime system, it would trickle into more PvP between the willing as well. So I would stress to include Stanton. But awesome, man. So cool that this guy gets it. So cool. Base dev. Cheers to the only PvP developer they have at that company, apparently. But nah, seriously though, big praise. Good stuff. And we love it. It fits into the sandbox, not something dorky and instanced, you know? So, big W, big W.